It's been said that art is really about the artist, and certainly in street photography that's the case. The street photographer does a lot like the other artists where they kind of act as a mirror to reflect society. So if you look at enough of a street photographer's work, you'll soon see, the larger picture about what makes them tick just by the subject matter that they're covering. My name is David Ofori Zapparoli. Eventually, that name hopefully will start to roll off your tongue a little bit better. But for now, what I'd like to do is talk about something that's very near and dear to me, something that I've been doing for a long time, and that, of course, is street photography. When I took this image in the mid-1980s, I probably wasn't thinking about how this image is going to reflect on the wider society. I think obviously what I was thinking about was just the dynamics of the photograph and how this young kid was hanging precariously off this statue and how it looked kind of fascinating to me. And it wasn't much later in my life I looked at it and I realized, well, this is making a comment on me to a large extent, because just like this kid here, me as a 10-year-old, I thought I was aware of my surroundings, but I was also kind of oblivious to my surroundings at the same time. That's basically how I approach this image. Okay, what exactly is street photography? Back when I was a young student in the media arts program, they told us that street photography was documentary photography. But that sounds a bit clinical to me. A good street photograph will make you think or go, wow, that's an amazing shot. Like, how did they get that? When I think back about the great photographs in street photography, we're always thinking about how the person was able to capture that moment and, kind of make history in that split second. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, we remember those iconic images. That's something that sticks in our head and how incredible they are and how they're able to capture it in that little split second. So there's really two ways. I mean, obviously, there's that first way where you can get it on the sly, but there's also the approach where you ask the subject. And there's no one right way to do it, because trying to do it on a sly comes with its risks, right? Because what if that person is thinking, oh, what are they going to try? What are they trying to do? And how are they going to use that photograph? Where if you ask the person, you're kind of taking the pressure off, and they might say no, but that's the risk of it. At the end of the day, there's no one right way to do it. It's more what you're comfortable with. I think the great street photographers were able to do both. I think of the work of somebody like Dorothea Lange. Even though she used a huge camera, it was gigantic. She used this camera that made 6x9 centimeter negatives, so it was quite large. But she obviously had to talk to the subject to get the photograph, but she was also at the same time able to make the photographs look like she wasn't even there. That comes with practice. Not everybody can do it, but she certainly had success at doing that. And there's also somebody, say, like Gordon Parks, who worked with 35mm and his very famous work on Flavio and his family. But they also knew that he was there, and they knew that they were the subject of his photographs, but he was able to make them look as if he was almost not in the room. There's obviously a combination of techniques that are being used, and I think the successful photographer is able to use both to their advantage. Okay, so we've agreed that there's more than one way to make a great street photograph. I just wanted to say that it's important for a photograph to have what I would call a hook. And that's the same as when you hear your favorite song, right? When you hear your favorite song, there's usually a hook, something that makes you remember the tune. Well, I think the same thing is true in photography, right? What I'm talking about is that there's going to be often something in the image that you're going to remember long after that image is gone. That hook might come in the composition, or there's something going on in it thematically that makes you remember it long after it's gone. So take this example here of these two individuals. You have this older white gentleman on the left, and you have this young black youth over here on the right, and they're both doing the same thing. They're both taking a sip from a cup. Of course, what's interesting in this for me are there's these opposites that are happening, but at the same time there's also this unity in the same gesture of taking a drink. Obviously there's something here that is fascinating because you have individuals that are physical opposites, but they're doing the same thing. So that's what I see as being a hook. There's this other image here that's taking place on a subway train, and if you can see this older woman here on the left, and she's looking kind of stern and a little bit maybe, who knows, kind of like bewildered by this group of youth. One who is very animated on the right side of the image, speaking with, I guess, a girl his age that's just in front of him. And this lady's kind of like off to the side, and she's expressing maybe a little bit of anxiety. Then here we have again an example of playing off opposites, right? So that's the visual hook that's happening here. We see this this situation where you have people in a subway that wouldn't normally interact together, but in this photograph, they're playing off of each other, and we're getting, a little bit of humor that's happening at the same time, a little bit of irony. That, I think, is something that, you can look for in a successful photograph when you're doing street photography. Just as often, or more often than not, it's also something that comes from the emotion in the photograph. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what I call bandwagon chasing. That's kind of a term that I've used to describe a lot of the work that I do in street photography. Essentially, what bandwagon chasing is you find an event, maybe after a sporting event where your team has won or a team has won. You might get involved with the crowd that's celebrating. That can take many forms, right? You can just be on the street. And what happens with that environment where people are having fun and enjoying themselves is that it's much easier for the photographer to blend in. And I think you'll find that you can do some of your best work in that situation, because it can become that fly on the wall that, we often talk about, that we want to be. People aren't suspicious about your presence there because you're seen almost as part of the event. Okay, there's a photographer, they're recording what we're doing, and it's all good because we're all feeling good, kind of thing. And I think I can give you several examples of that. If you look at this photograph of these two men that seem to be obviously enjoying themselves, both on the right and the left, and obviously their teams have done well in the World Cup. They're very jovial, and you don't see grown men dancing like this often in the street for no reason at all. It's kind of a rare event. I kind of really identify with these kind of events because people are at their best, and I think me being an optimistic person, it kind of reflects me. And when I say, art is about the artist, I think that if you're an optimistic person, you're going to seek out that kind of optimism, that kind of elation. I think I do some of my best work in those situations because I feel the emotion. That kind of energy finds its way into your photographs inevitably. So that's definitely something to look for. And you don't have to wait for your team to win a championship, because you can get opportunities like this in anything from a parade to a festival. There's all kinds of opportunities where you can find that you are even kind of welcome as somebody who's a visual creator. So something to think about, and something that I treasure. Now we're almost experiencing events in a secondary kind of way. We're not interfacing with the event that's unfolding in front of us. We're actually processing the event. Our first intent is to process the event on our smartphones, and then we try to consume it and share it as opposed to experiencing it firsthand. And I find that a little bit strange, only because I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing photography for ages, and it seems strange to me. Yes, when I photographed the Raptors parade in Toronto, I'm a Torontonian. It was an incredible event. 2 million people showed up in the streets of the city. Let's hope that we can see those days again, where crowds can fill the streets. We can stand shoulder to shoulder and enjoy each other's company. But for now, what I have to remind myself of that are all these photographs that I took of that day. Some of that was supposed to be an exhibit as part of the Contact Festival. Some of it's still online, and you can see it if you go to the Contact Festival website. So to wrap up, I just want you to know that this is my first time making a YouTube video to share. I really appreciate you watching, and I even more appreciate you getting your feedback and finding out how I can make this better, find out the other things that you'd like to know about how to approach street photography, or if you're interested in how I specifically approach it. I'm more than happy to share that with you, and I'm hoping that we can have even more video sessions where you can learn. By all means, leave your comments at the bottom, and I'll enjoy reading those. And looking forward to hearing from all of you, and everybody stay safe.